This is Pursuit Force, an action-packed arcade racer published by Sony on their handheld PlayStation Portable. I reviewed this game all the way back in 2006 and haven't played it in a decade. That is, until now. This is Review Rewind, a show where I revisit my old reviews to see if I like them more, less, or about the same as I did all those years ago. Join me as I play Pursuit Force and review my 2006 review in this debut episode of Review Rewind. Pursuit Force is, without a doubt, the single most exciting portable game on the market today. That's how I started my review back in March of 2006, and it's the main reason I wanted to revisit this early generation PSP game. Is it possible that this wasn't just a hyperbolic introduction to grab your attention, and Pursuit Force actually is as exciting as I thought a dozen years ago? That's what I want to find out. Now, in case you don't remember Pursuit Force, it was a spy hunter style action game where the player literally jumps from car to car in hopes of taking down gangsters, drug cartels, and a whole bunch of Saturday morning cartoon villains. Think of it as the forerunner to the Far Cry series. At the time, I'd never seen anything quite like it before. It was like a fast-paced mix between Grand Theft Auto and Chase HQ. What sets Pursuit Force apart from all the other action racing games is that it allows you to swap vehicles at any time you want to. I'm not talking about pulling somebody over and getting in their car, oh no! Pursuit Force gives you the opportunity to fling yourself out of the car and leap on to other cars. At which point you can kill the driver, kick him out of the car, and then use it until you see a reason to commandeer another car. Going in, I was a bit worried that this wasn't going to handle as well as I remembered. Even though I said that the controls are always tight and responsive, I was dubious. But it turns out that I was right. Pursuit Force still handles well. Taking corners is a breeze thanks to the power slide, and racing along is effortless with the game's arcade-style controls. This game isn't about driving simulation, it's about getting to the next car, jumping on the car, killing the people inside, and then driving it to victory. Yeah, I stand by those statements a dozen years later. When it comes to the negatives, my glowing review only pointed out one problem, but it was a big one. If there are any problems with the career mode, it's that some levels end with non-driving sections. It's not that the Pursuit Force officer has bad control, but these sections just seem tacked on and unnecessary. This is 100% accurate, and the on-foot sections still annoy me. The game's momentum comes to a screeching halt the moment you get out of the car, and the developers at Big Studios should have realized this early on. This is a game about driving fast, shooting enemies, and crazy acrobatic stunts. This never should have been a third-person shooter. Despite this being my original review's only complaint, I found a few other problems when revisiting this game for the first time in a decade. I noticed that there are a lot of escort missions, which are kind of a drag in this type of action game. I was also surprised by how long the levels are. There's one stage early on where you race through the streets on a police bike, shoot up the outside of a warehouse, and then jump in a boat to go up against a helicopter. There are a lot of these missions that have multiple sections and checkpoints, and part of me wishes that they would have just fleshed out each part and turned it into separate levels. One thing you can't be disappointed in is the graphics. Pursuit Force looks phenomenal on the PSP's widescreen display. Everything looks so beautiful and crisp. The world whips around you at a mind-blistering speed. This is the type of game you use to show off the power of Sony's PlayStation Portable. The entire game, from introductions to menus to endings, are all top-notch. They feature a very polished look that leads to one of the most satisfying PSP games I've ever played. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that the graphics don't look nearly as good today when compared to what we're getting on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, but I was still impressed with the speed and performance. I booted up the UMD on my first generation PSP and was surprised how well it ran. I have no problem understanding why I was blown away by the graphics back in 2006, especially for this being a portable game. Now, it's worth noting that I had to turn to an emulator in order to capture the footage for this review, but I played through most of it on my original PSP. I'm gonna be honest with you, I kinda went in expecting Pursuit Force to be bad. I mean, I definitely remember being caught up in the excitement and impressed by the presentation, but also recall that I was one of the few that gave it a high score. Electronic Gaming Monthly gave it 3s and 4s out of 10, complaining that it was too violent and killing criminals and terrorists was unsavory. I really felt like I gotta, pull these guys over and take them into the precinct for questioning. That's the only time I can remember EGM complaining about an action game having too much action. But after 12 years and a fresh set of eyes, I'm ready to say that most other critics were wrong. Pursuit Force remains a great time that does a good job of holding up. Yeah, the on-foot missions are still lame, and I can't believe I let the escort missions slide all those years ago. But my opinion of the game remains largely unchanged. I gave it a B+ back in 2006, and would probably give it a B today. But that's only because I know that Pursuit Force 2 exists and improves on the formula. I say give it a shot if you're not turned off by action and excitement in your action games. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Review Rewind. So here's the question of the day. Do you have a favorite PSP game? Now, I know a lot of people missed out on Sony's first portable, but I loved it. I have the itch to go through more PSP games, so expect to see the system pop up in future episodes of Review Rewind. Speaking of which, we're going to be running a new episode of Review Rewind every Friday going forward. I already have 4 more episodes ready to go, and I plan on playing more PS2 games this weekend. We also have a bunch of modern reviews to get to, but that's just gonna have to wait until Monday. I recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.